So pretty much kind of like Jacob's background, I worked at Southern Communications in Amarillo. Started off there. Was working at Pizza Hut slinging pizzas, and I just said, hey, you know what? So I've always like had an IT background experience, but I just got to a point where I'm like, I need a career. So I signed up to work as a contractor. So I did that for 2 years. Then looking on Indy for another opportunity to get into fiber. I was exposed a little bit to fiber there, but it's not the pure fiber like we run. It still hit fiber over coaxial, it's just not good. So I found Vexus, which I never heard of in my life. I just heard new ISPs come to town. So and it turned out when I went in for my interview, it was a couple of the guys who were long-term over at that internet provider. They came over to run the internal office. So I started with them, and so they taught me everything I knew. So I was a field technician, going into the homes, installing. So how I got into network was I did some learning inside, how does, fiber optic splitter work, or, how does the internet get from one point to another? And then I did some of the learning on my own, YouTube, Google, just Google GPON, and that'll tell you everything you need to know mostly about fiber.
What was it?
It's called GPON, GPON. It stands for Gigabit Passive Optical Network.
Okay.
And so in our system, we can take one fiber and service 32 people. So we have an input light that splits it 32 times. And so that can service 32 customers, but we can still provide up to 10 gigabit per second if we wanted to.
So you guys are learning that about the optics, is how the light refracts when you got single mode, multi-mode. It still fascinates me. Mm-hmm. I came up in the telephone world, and it's still fascinating. You can pick up the phone and dial up some numbers, and all the electrical circuits through a copper wire can get all the way to the East Coast to the West Coast. So, and then nowadays you're sending all this video, and you can see family members over a fiber optic network. It's fascinating.
So probably about to say 8 to 10 months, Jacob was already there. He was hired as a network tech, and then he was promoted to network supervisor, which then he hired me into the network department. So I came in with just, the residential side of it. So I got to see the commercial, the head end, how, do dedicated internet access work versus, your typical residential customer. So he taught me everything I knew, then he moved over here. Then with him being gone, I didn't really have anybody. I had people to lean onto, but I wanted it to be my own demeanor to really learn this and master this. So I took experience from the gentleman who took his place. And I was like, I really want to grow my career here at Vexus because we're very customer focused in some way. Because I could be on the field, literally just filling up the gas at the local convenience store. Hey, Vexus, we're so glad you guys are here. Legitimately, I've had people stop on the road saying, hey, thanks for being here. Because it's easy just to pick up the phone, call somebody at Lubbock, hey, I have a problem with my service, boom, we're there the next day. But so going back into the network side, so I mastered it. So, I learned everything with dedicated internet access, how phone systems work, how to get fiber into a building. It really challenges your ways to, even in a simple building like this, you may not have anywhere to access, so you have to really dig deep to figure out how are we going to get into this building. But I didn't know anything about fiber, but here I am today because Jacob called me to be out here, and I couldn't be more excited. So.
Yeah, so he moved here, so he lives next door to Jacob. Where he's rented a place there. It's like the son you never had.
Something like that. If y'all are really wanting to get into how I count fiber, fiber enclosure, splicing fiber, you'll get really good at this. And if you really like a tech nerd like me and want to really know how the guts of the network work, this is the department to be in.
That's why I hired him. Brainy. That's brainy. So, like you said, I came from a coax provider, and I started installation straight out of high school, had no background, had no idea what I was doing. So initially I did it to shut my grandfather up, get a job, work. So there, I went through the installation, went into the commercial side of things, installing commercial, moved into a bucket. And then I realized, man, I really like this industry. So then I actually moved out. They got bought out, that company did. I didn't like the way things were going, so I left. And I went and was riding rails, and I was a conductor for the railroad. Hated my life, and I really just wish I never had left that industry. So fortunately for me, I knew a lot of the people from my previous life at that job that are now working at Vexus. and gave me a call and said, hey, we have some opportunities here. So I started doing some research, jumped on board as a network tech, so I was flying a bucket, maintaining the plant. Really enjoyed it. Got my opportunity as a supervisor over the network department, which Diego is now. And I just really enjoyed it. Here, they're very customer based. We are very customer based. Just a lot different what you would want to do and who you would want to work for. So I knew that I was going to have a career here and I was going to stay long term. So when Kevin, I had to sit down with Kevin, and the opportunity arose for Santa Fe and to be a part of building something new here in New Mexico, and you know, kind of turning the tide of what you would normally think a internet provider is and interactions you have with them, and us being able to say, you know, we're customer focused, let us be different. So for me to be able to put my footprint on that, absolutely no brainer. So I hopped on board, came here, been slow moving, eating a lot of green chilies, love it. And I just can't praise this company enough. You know, just doing things different. But when you get to go to a customer's home and they're excited that you're there, versus, you know, when you do go and they're upset, it's a good feeling. So that's a little bit of my background.
Oh boy.
It's gonna be long.
Yeah, boy, that's pretty long. So my mom was a vice president for Mobile. So I grew up in the phone world. All my stepdads, 4 of them, were all phone guys. So I didn't want to go in the phone world. I went in the military, got out. The phone company was hired. I said, all right, I got an in, I'm going to go in. This is all in California. So I got hired with Pac Bell before there was internet, before there was pagers, before any of that. You know, it was pretty exciting. Because you were pretty much a local hero. Because when you showed up and their phone wasn't working, oh God, you know, they wanted their phone. I mean, back in the days, some of you might be too young to know what I'm talking about.
They still had a cord on them.
Oh yeah, I did princess phones, I did pay phones, I've done all kinds of things with copper. Learned everything I could about copper business, worked on 56K, T1s, ISDNs, all kinds of stuff. Thought, hey, I'm going to be in the copper world forever. I'm going to learn this stuff. Then DSL came. I was one of the first DSL techs in the United States. It came out to our area, and I said, well, I want to learn this. Pretty exciting. New technology, started learning about data. Didn't know what it was. So went to school, got all kinds of certificates, A+, CCNPs, and all kinds of good stuff. So I really got fascinated with the communication part of it. So I worked in California for AT&T for about 10 years, a little place called Lake Tahoe. Then I moved here, worked 15 years for Quest, CenturyLink. You all know who they are. DSL tech, so I'm sorry for anyone who has DSL. Don't blame me. So I decided, well, you know, DSL fiber's coming. Boy, I said 10 years ago, we all talked about it as tech. We need fiber in New Mexico. They did not want to do it. CenturyLink did not want to spend the money. We begged them. We said, these people here want it. I mean, you would have the market. We'd beat everyone. They just refused to do it. So I quit CenturyLink and went to Vermont to work for Consolidated. And we were putting fiber in all of Vermont. Wiring. So that was pretty exciting. So I said, well, let me learn all this good stuff. So I became a manager out there, and we were putting it in. My daughter got pregnant, so I said, well, I want to come back to New Mexico. Got a job at Sandia, working on their fiber. And then I saw a news article with Vexus. So I reached out to them because they said they got the permits and they're putting fiber. I said, this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I want to do in my career, helping build something great. And I looked them up, and their customer reviews are awesome. The things the phone company used to do, you know, they don't do anymore. I don't know if you ever called lately customer service, but it's not fun. No, these people are serious. I said, well, I want to be part of this. So here I am today. So this is pretty exciting to be able to start in the copper world. I can't believe in my lifetime I went from copper to now it's fiber. I mean, it's such a huge gap. I mean, seriously, it's unbelievable. So staying on top of this stuff there's there's always something to learn. I mean, there's always something to learn. When you think you know it all, there's always something more to learn. Nobody knows it all. If they tell you they know it all, yeah, then they don't know. You know, it just doesn't work that way.
So, but